Hello and welcome back to The Composed Artist. I'm your host, Stephanie Gaffney. I'm an artist and a live wedding painter in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I am also an educator. I don't know if you are just hopping on, finding the podcast for the very first time, or if you're an avid listener, but I am an educator as well. I'm a self taught artist. And so I basically am here to share everything that I've learned in the past 10 plus years as a professional artist and a live wedding painter. Share that with anybody who is interested and willing to listen and wants to learn, honestly. I wish somebody would have had a YouTube channel or a podcast, a course, or any sort of education or instructional offering 10 years ago when I started live painting. I would have been hooked on that to avoid all of the mistakes and trials and errors that I experienced over the past decade, and to avoid all of that and to succeed sooner and faster and like by leaps and bounds instead of baby steps. So here we are. This episode today is actually a coaching call. Emily Winslow is an artist in Indiana who has been a member of the Wedding Painters Blueprint, which is my online course for live wedding painters. And she shot me a DM recently. And this is what I welcome not only my students, but anyone in the world. If you have a question, you can shoot me a DM either at Tora Grossa Fine Art. That's my personal main business Instagram account. Tora Grossa, just so you know, is spelled TORREGROSSA Fine Art. Tora Grossa is my maiden name. Just a recap, anyone who doesn't know what on earth that is or what it means. And like Picasso or Michelangelo, when I'm dead and gone, everybody's going to know who it is and how to spell it. But right now, it's just another way that I introduce myself because my name is Stephanie Gaffney. I took my husband's name when we got married. Anywho, you can DM me at Tora Grossa Fine Art or Wedding Painters Blueprint, or The Composed Artist on Instagram. I've got those three accounts and I'm active on all three. If you have a question about live painting, if you have a question, just shoot me a DM with a question and I'll answer it when I see it and when I can, when I have time. As many of you know, you may not know, I'm a mother as well. I have 4 children and I work from home, so I'm very busy. And so I answer DMs when I can, but I love to kind of respond with a voice message if it's like a quick kind of question answer scenario. If it's something more deep or something that requires mentorship or guidance, I would encourage you book a coaching call. I offer like Zoom coaching calls for an hour and a half. I can do a website audit, a portfolio audit, and then just offer like next step advice. Here's what I recommend you do, specifically you in your stage of your own journey, to get to level up your business, level up your painting style, that kind of thing. But anyway, Emily shot me a DM and she said, I think I'm ready. She was working with acrylics for her live wedding paintings. And she's mainly a watercolor painter. She has a YouTube channel. She talks about it in the episode. Stick around. You'll hear all about Emily's story. But as a wedding painter, she was working primarily with acrylics. And she was like, I'm thinking about switching to oils. Help. How do I do that? Because I did the same thing. I worked with acrylics for 9 years and then completely switched to oils. And I said, okay, before she did ask for a coaching session. And I said, okay, before we do that, this is a topic that I've coached other artists on many times. It's something I've talked about many times. And this time I would like to share, I would like the opportunity to, I guess, give you this advice, but like also record it and give it to everyone who's interested in hearing how I switched from acrylic to oil, and then answering questions and offering advice on how you too can switch your process from painting with acrylics live at weddings in a timed high pressure environment, switch from acrylics to oils and what to expect, and maybe how to tweak your process to utilize the materials efficiently and effectively. So that's what we talked about today. And it was a nice long conversation. I think this will just be one nice long episode that you can listen to at your leisure because it was really good. I don't really want to cut any of it. So without further ado, please welcome Emily Winslow. Grab a pen and paper, sketchbook, take some notes. And yeah, I hope that this inspires you if you've been thinking about taking the jump from acrylics to oils. I hope that maybe after this episode, you feel a little bit more confident and less scared of this daunting idea of switching to oils. And if you have any questions, please either shoot me an email at hello@thecomposedartist.com, or you can email us also at support@stephaniegaffney.com. Both of those email addresses my team and I manage. And I would be happy to either set up a coaching call to talk one-on-one with you, or just answer any more questions, or like I said, shoot me a DM on Instagram at Torgrosa Fine Art. All right, let's get started. Good morning, Emily. Thank you so much for coming and
Good
hang out with me on the
morning.
podcast today.
Thank you for
How are
having me
you?
on. So excited to be on. I listen to your podcast all the time. So whenever
Do
I paint,
you?
I have it on. So it'll
What do
be,
you like to listen to the most? Do you prefer kind of the solo informational instructional episodes, or do you like the interviews better?
I love both. I mean, I love the solo information
Do you?
because I always learn something. I mean, I learned something from the guest too, of
Yeah,
course. But I mean, I kind of find the guest ones maybe more as entertainment, and then the solo ones is more informative. So just a combination of
good.
both.
Oh, that's so good to hear. That's what I am aiming for.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for hanging out. This is so fun. You reached out asking, like telling me in a DM that you were kind of starting to feel ready to switch from acrylic to oils for your live wedding painting. And
Yep.
so I'm very excited to talk about that today on this episode. So this will be kind of it's an interview. Yeah, there's two people, but it's kind of like a coaching call. So for everyone listening, that you're going to basically sit in, be a fly on the wall of what it's kind of like to have a coaching call with me. So this is very exciting for me because I mean, I get to hear everything about where you are, where you want to go, and then just kind of answer your questions and help point you in the right direction and just be a mentor in any way that you need, any way that I can be. So this is very exciting for me. Thank you.
It's very
Please
exciting for me too.
introduce, good. Please introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a bit about how you became a professional artist, what you really like to do, whether it's the commissions or the live painting, but also your original stuff too. Tell us all about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Emily Winslow. I am based out of Indiana, and I'm primarily a watercolor artist. I love to paint original pieces and I sell them on my website. I do a lot of art jobs. But one of my favorite things, I love to do art fairs. So I just do about 4 to 5 a year, not a ton, but they take, months in advance to prepare for. But they're always so rewarding to build the customer base there and see paintings that I worked on go to new homes. But on top of that, I do live wedding paintings. That's another big part of my art business. And so back up to when I started doing my art business in general. I started in 2021. I was, working at a tech shop. I worked at that tech shop for 6 years and started doing art on the side. And it was a lot to juggle both. I actually just went full time this year with art.
Yay!
So about 4 years into starting my art journey. But in 2023, that's when I started doing live wedding paintings. I got asked by one of my customers who had asked for a commission. I'd done a few commissions for her, and she was like, "Do you want to paint my wedding?" And I said no. I was like, I had never heard of live wedding painting at that point, and I was like, "How do you even do that?" And I was like, "I don't think I can take it on." So I just told her I don't think I can do it, and she came back and was like, "I really think you can." So I was like, all right, I'll do it for like really cheap. So I charged like next to nothing, and went and did it, and I just like the adrenaline rush of doing that. It just made me so passionate to look for more to do. And from there, it just kind of was word of mouth, building up more of a customer base. Once I started posting about it on social media, I started getting more bookings through that. And now it's a pretty big part of my art business. So, really thankful to be doing that.
That's so cool. So you were doing wedding paintings for almost 2 years, a year and a half before you were able to quit your job and
Mm-hmm.
like take art full time. And you were creating art for art festivals and art fairs. And it takes I mean, months to create the body of work
Yes.
to then go out and sell over the course of a weekend or a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of work. That's a lot going on. So, did
It
you
is.
enjoy like it sounds like you had kind of a left brain analytical type job and then you were able to kind of get your creativity out through the art on the side. And then make some money and sell it at the art festivals.
Yeah.
Where why did you eventually quit your job? Were you always wanting to kind of step away from the tech job and do art full time, or did it just kind of like start as a hobby and then snowball to where it's like, well, this is taking up more of my time, it's profitable, let's try this route? Like, what was your
Yeah.
mindset?
Gosh, well, I was like thinking about it this year because it's 2025, and I was like,
Yeah.
5 years ago in 2020, if you had told me I'd be a full time artist, I would have been like, what? Because like at that point, I wasn't even doing art.
Yeah.
So I majored in business analytics, and planned to work in the tech field my whole life. When I started doing art, and also the reason I kind of picked up watercolor, I did this like 30-day challenge because my husband was going to get his MBA. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I need to look for a hobby to do while he's gone. And so I just I just started doing watercolor as a hobby, definitely
Yeah.
not trying to make a business out of it. And it did just kind of snowball into that.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I think 2 to 3 years into selling art that I even considered going full time,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, how, like, can you even make money doing art
Yeah.
like full time? Like, going a tech job, it's pretty decent money, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna ever be able to replace that with art. But then finally, at like 2 to 3 years in, I was like, started to think about it, and it was really at the beginning of 2024 that I was like, all right, I am gonna take this entire year to really plan to go full time next year. So I like took like a full year of working full time and like planning to quit my
Mm-hmm.
job. So it was like hard. Like that was actually really hard of like knowing I was gonna quit, but still
Yeah.
having to like work my full time job, and be
Yeah.
present there. And then it was just I actually I made a YouTube video. I also have a YouTube channel. So I made this video about my quitting story, and I actually recorded because I worked remote. I recorded myself actually quitting, and so you can go watch that.
Oh
And
my
it was
gosh. Yeah, we're gonna link to that in the show notes so people can just click right to it and go watch that because I want to watch that. Was it very dramatic or was it just kind of like,
oh,
whew, like suspenseful? How did it feel to quit on camera like that?
it felt like a huge relief. Like I
Oh,
think the hardest part about it was that I didn't hate my job. You know how some people are like,
mm-hmm.
"Oh, I hate my job. I want to quit to do my
Yeah,
passion." It was hard to quit because I mean, it was fine. I didn't quite it wasn't my passion, but I didn't mind doing my job. And
yeah,
so um and I had a great team. I worked with a great company, and so it was a little hard to tell my manager because she's so sweet, and
yeah,
um she took it so well and was like, "Oh, I'm so happy for you. I knew you would do this eventually." Because I mean, my team knew I was an artist and doing
yeah,
that on the side. I didn't keep that a secret, but it was just such a weight off because whenever I was working my 9 to 5, I was just always dreaming of, oh, what am I going to paint after this?
yeah. That's beautiful. I think a lot of creatives and artists find themselves in that spot. You know, they're working and they have a good job. They may really love their job, but then they just kind of find themselves daydreaming about what they're going to do creatively after they get home from
Mm-hmm.
work. And that's just an artist's soul. I love that. I love that that's a thread that we have, like a common thread between all creatives and artists who eventually do quit their jobs and become
Mm-hmm.
professional independent artists, which is awesome. So you do watercolor originals and you sell those works. Do you sell them online or just in person at shows?
I do sell them on my store. Mostly my online shop is my print collections. I have a ton of
Okay.
I have like a national print collection, flowers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't sell a ton of originals on my shop during like art fair season, which I currently have, one that I'm actually working towards right
Hmm.
now. So I don't have my originals on my shop a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, during off seasons, I do put them on
That's
there.
awesome. And then you have a YouTube channel. What do you do? Like, what do you share on your YouTube channel? What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, so start out, I do mostly watercolor tutorials. They're pretty short, 20 to 30-minute long, quick tutorials. I started doing that because that's how I got into art, and just by doing really quick tutorials on YouTube. And so I was like, oh, I want to give back to that and like see if I can help get other people just into painting through that, because it doesn't have to take, hours long to create a painting. It can just take 20 to 30 minutes. And I, besides tutorials, I also do like little vlogs. I just went on a trip to Italy, and so I'm gonna make this like little vlog of all the plein air paintings I did there, and I also do like just art business tip videos on there as well.
That's so generous. I love that. I love artists that are like, well, I'm doing the work anyway, and this is how I learn. So I'm going to be
Mhm.
helpful and just share my journey, share bits and pieces of what you know for other people who were like you were a year ago, like learning. That's so generous. I love that. It also takes courage because imposter syndrome keeps all of it, it hits all of us,
Mhm.
at various points in our career. And so kind of pushing past that and saying, you know what, no, it's okay if I haven't been doing this very long, or if there's so many other people out there who are already doing it, like, no, like getting past that and starting something, it takes a lot of courage and true entrepreneurial spirit, you know. And then
Definitely.
I love your YouTube channel. I think it's very well done. Everybody go check it out. We're going to link to it as well here on the podcast in the show notes. And then there are some clips in there, some videos that you made about live wedding painting. So you have this kind of career centered around selling your paintings and your prints. You travel around and do art shows. That's like a whole business in and of itself. And then you do the YouTube channel, which is very time consuming and takes a lot of effort and isn't always like profitable. So that's like a passion project.
Right.
I love that. And then you do live wedding paintings. Do you do your wedding paintings in watercolor as well?
I was gonna talk about that. No, I do not. I think I think that would be so stressful. I know some artists who do it, and I'm like, how the heck do you do it? I love the look of watercolor. I mean, I do my originals in watercolor, but when it comes to a live event, I think like there's like no messing up with watercolor. Once lay paint on there, it's like you can't really take it off or layer over it.
Hmm.
Whereas I use acrylic when I do live wedding paintings currently. Um, and it's so easy to fix a mistake if I
Yeah.
need to.
The
Just
very
layer
first
over it.
one, the client who had hired you, who basically kind of convinced you, yeah, 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 you can do this. I have faith in
Uh-huh.
you. Did you do that one in acrylic or did you try watercolor?
I just knew I was not going to do watercolor
Yeah.
for that. I'm like, I'm just going to go straight to acrylic cuz yeah, I hadn't worked a ton with acrylic before that. Kind of, back in high school, I dabbled around with acrylic.
Hmm.
So that was really my only experience with it. So before that wedding, I had practiced doing my own wedding in acrylic.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Now I
Awesome.
look at that painting and I'm like, oh no, I need to redo that.
Yeah, but I love that because it shows growth. Like it shows like,
Hmm.
oh, I know how far I've come. I could totally do better than that. But it is also important to do the paint. Like if you've never done one, like do it. Get it out of your system
Hmm.
because when you do it, you're going to be very impressed with what you're able to do and then use it as like the starting point and then always kind of refer back to that. I talk about that a lot in terms of comparison. It's really easy to be on your own journey and be creating your work and selling, doing live wedding paintings and, time is passing, whatever. And then you hop on Instagram and you see other people's
Yeah.
work and you feel like you want to compare yourself to their work, compare your work to their work. But it's really important to keep that, like keep a picture of it on your desktop of your very first live wedding painting and then just go look at it and then compare
Hmm.
that, the decisions that you made. Because when you look at the painting in your brain, it's like a zoop, a time warp. You go right back to that night and the decisions that you made to creating that painting. And then you can not only look at the finished piece, but also remember the transformation that's happened since that very first gig to
Yes.
your latest one. So I think that that's a beautiful reminder to everybody, whether it's your original work or um, your first commission, your first
Hmm.
portrait, whatever. Remember that. Fellow entrepreneurs, listen up. Let's talk about protecting your business. We all know that having a solid contract is essential, but drafting them is daunting and can be very expensive. I'm an artist, I'm not a lawyer for a reason. That's where the legal page comes in. The legal page offers attorney drafted contract templates tailored for creatives and small business owners like you and me. Whether you're a photographer, an artist, a business coach, a designer, or an event planner, or what have you, they've got you covered. These templates are easy to customize and come with very clear instructions that include free future updates. That's huge. I was honored to be asked to review their live event artist contract, and it checks all the boxes for me. Don't leave your business vulnerable. Invest in peace of mind with the Legal Pages contract templates. So, if you're ready to get your business legally legit, head to the show notes and click the link to save 10% off any product in the shop, or use my code StephanieG10. Again, get your business legally legit with a Legal Page contract today. So, why do you want to try oils now? You're really good at watercolor. You're teaching people how to use watercolor. You've been working with acrylics for at weddings for almost 2 years now. What's going on? What you thinking?
Yeah. I on top of watercolor, I actually do a lot of originals in oil. I have a few behind me. Um,
Okay.
and I love the feel of using oil. I think I've really started to, I'm happy, with the acrylic paintings I do, but you know that feeling when it's like you're happy with it, but it's like you just feel like you could do a little bit better. I
Mm,
kind of, feel like I'm just not giving my 100%. Like I could do them better if I were to use a different medium. I think acrylics have just like the last few weddings I've noticed, they've just dried so quickly for me, and I haven't
mm-hmm.
it's like drying time that's really been tough for me. And I know there's mediums out there that you can help slow it down, or maybe using more water in it.
Mm-hmm.
But since I have, used oils for, I do a lot of like original like landscapes. So the thing that I'm, I guess, nervous about the switch is I don't have like any experience really in doing portraits with oil. I do a lot of landscapes with
Mm-hmm.
oil. I love the way it feels or to use, but I would have to practice a lot. So I feel like the switch, it can't happen anytime soon. I'm gonna have to like practice with it before feeling comfortable. But
Yeah.
but I want to know your experience with the switch, because you have experience using both acrylic and oil,
Mm-hmm.
and how, like, what was that first wedding like when you did the switch?
It's so funny that you ask. I worked with acrylics for like 9 years. I built my entire career. I built the course, the Wedding Painter's Blueprint,
Mm,
based on my knowledge as an acrylic painter. And I was working with oils when I do plein air painting. So, doing the little 5x7 studies and for funsies kind of paintings over the past couple of years. I was using oils and then also a limited palette. So just kind of learning, right? Just
mhm,
for fun, just for me. And so I knew how oil paints worked out in the wild in open air, the drying time. I kind of got used to the how you work with oils through plein air paintings, through testing. So um, I didn't just all of a sudden say, "Oh, well, I'm going to switch." In fact, I used to tell people I'll never switch to oils. I know, I'm
mhm,
confident. I've built a style, I've built a business. I know exactly why reinvent the wheel. I know exactly how to do my job. I'm very good at it and I'm very confident. And so why throw a wrench in that and try something new and more difficult seemingly, right? And I would tell anyone that. And it was still very fun and I was still very confident using acrylics, but because I was working with oils for fun and then getting used to how buttery the consistency is and how slow the drying time is, honestly, how vibrant the colors are, and then also the texture that is still visible after it dries. And then on the flip side, on the weekend at a wedding, working with acrylics,
mhm,
which as we know, are water based, and so they evaporate. The water evaporates very quickly. They dry very quickly and flat. The colors being a little drying a little on the darker side. It was just kind of like my mind was. I was being trained to get a different result through the act of painting with the oils,
mm,
and I was not confused, but conflicted. Like there's another process that I enjoy, and this isn't it. And it wasn't until, and I did that for years. And I actually started, I really wanted to get into doing traditional oil portraits. And so I was doing
Mm.
commissions, wedding portraits from photographs. I was doing those in oils in the studio. I knew I could kind of work with the medium and figure out how to use it, figure out all the different mediums that you can use to either slow the drying time or increase the drying time. Doing glazes, I got to play with the mediums as a family, if you will, in the studio with no pressure. It was a commission, so there was pressure with that, but there was this pressure to produce an excellent portrait, of course. But I could take my time. I can make corrections. I could start over from scratch if I needed to. It wasn't like a wedding where you got one shot, go. And I was really enjoying working with the oils. I was enjoying the finished product. And basically, I did a wedding, and I've talked about this many times on the podcast, but I'll revisit it. I did a wedding in Branson, Missouri, and it was at the top of a hill, basically
Mm.
overlooking the river. Gorgeous wedding, gorgeous florals, gorgeous view. And I was painting the background like I usually do before the reception began, and painting the landscape. And even with my golden open air paints, which I really loved using, they have a slower drying time. Even using those paints with a slow drying medium, the paint was drying really quickly, and I wasn't able to get this kind of really distant, translucent gradient in the background that I really wanted. And I remember thinking, this is it. Oils would never do this to me. So I'll tell anybody, I broke up with acrylics after that
Oh
wedding.
man.
The painting came out great. I was comfortable with the portraits, and I was able to layer and add more color and more vibrancy or whatever. But the painting came out beautiful. But I remember thinking, I don't I it doesn't matter how much more work it will add to my plate, because it does. Transporting a wet oil painting,
Mm-hmm.
it's much more of a hassle. There's a when you ship it after the wedding, you can't leave. I used to finish the painting at the wedding, and the acrylic painting. It was dry to the touch, and I'd leave it with the wedding planner or a family member. I'd be able, especially when I traveled out of state,
Yeah.
being able to just hand the painting and they have it, and it's done, was really nice. It was really nice
That's
for
yeah.
them, and it was really nice for me because the job was done. Woo! Now I bring all the paintings back. Even if they're finished, they still dry. I varnish them, I ship them. The cost I provide, my business model is like white glove. I provide,
Mm-hmm.
everything is included in the cost. Nobody's getting a bill for shipping, even if the shipping cost increases or decreases, like
Mm-hmm.
it is, I cover it. So they
Wow.
they just have like a timeline to be patient until the painting is done, and then it arrives at their door. And it's a little bit more work on the tail end of that, but I enjoy the process of creating the painting. And I've had people ask, especially when I travel, they're like, "Do you think you could just use acrylics just for mine, because I kind of
Oh
want the
wow.
paint?" Yeah, I wouldn't do it even if it was convenient. I remember one cup I was hired to paint as a gift. A past client of mine, Michaela, if she's listening, hey girl, I painted at her wedding in Telluride, and it was absolutely beautiful and amazing. And then she hired me to paint at her friend's wedding. And at that point, I had completely switched to oils. And she's an artist as well. And I was talking to her about oils or acrylics, and she said, "Just do it in acrylics. I don't care. It's going to look beautiful." And I remember thinking it'd be so much easier if I could, but I did oils anyway because it was the process.
Yeah.
So, when you get, and then, yeah, you do have to kind of give it a try, the portraits, in oils. And then, but even in the wedding painter's blueprint, the way that I was painting with acrylics is kind of modeled after the way I paint with oils, that, painting more like you're considering the finished composition at the beginning of the painting. So you kind of
Mm-hmm.
sketch everything out, you have a plan, and then you're not painting the whole background or the room full of tables and then adding people in front of the tables. You're not wasting that
Yeah.
time. You have the finished composition in mind, and you kind of puzzle piece the painting for the rest of the night. And then it turns out you can layer with oils. It's just a matter of using thinner layers or not as oily, not as fat. There's this concept with oil painting. I'm sure you know it's fat over
Mhm.
lean. So oil paint mixed with a little bit of solvent, a little bit of paint thinner or Gams. I use Gamsol. Um, that not too watery, obviously, because that'll break down the quality of the components in the oil paint, and it'll get cracky and dry. So you don't really want to thin it down too much like you would with watercolors,
Mhm.
but not as like thick globbed onto. You're not
Right.
going to start with that thick paint. You're going to start with a thinned layer, and then you can build on that. And paint mixed with a little bit of solvent is actually going to dry really quickly. And then anytime if you make a mistake, you can wipe it away, you can scrape it away, and
Mm,
then just add paint on top of it.
sure.
So that's something that I was able to learn quickly with that very first oil painting. And I did make a mistake. I'm rambling now because I'm so excited. I have this whole world of experience and I just want to pour it out.
Yep.
My
I
very
need to
first
hear it.
Yeah, okay, here it comes. Everyone listening, pause pause the
Get your
video.
pencils.
Look, I'll shut up and take a sip of coffee real fast. My very first oil painting, and I'll tell you in a minute how I got that job. It was a 30 by 40-inch painting, so it was
Oof.
huge. For my first oil painting, and they had hanging from the ceiling was a lot of like green vines and orchid kind of like they were, I think they were fake, but it was just very kind of viney hanging down from the ceiling, very very pretty, ethereal kind of. And but the ballroom it was in had a very structured, gridded architectural ceiling design. And usually I get those architectural lines drawn with acrylics first so that the perspective and the proportional lines
Mhm.
are perfect, right? So I started that process and I started, illustrating where those lines would go and lining up the room, the grid, the perspective of the room properly. And then I went to paint the green leaves on top of the white, white toned ceiling. And the green got mixed in with the white and it was
Oh.
very muddy. And I was like, oh no, okay, lesson learned. Like you can't put dark oil paint on top of lighter
Oh.
oil paint because it doesn't, it mixes immediately and it gets, and it lightens up, it gets muddy, honestly. So that's a tip I learned, start with the darker pigments and then, or be very intentional with placing dark pigments without, um, not on a layer of a wet lighter pigment.
So would you have done the greenery first then and then
Yes.
the white ceiling?
Yes.
Okay.
So since
See.
then, what I've learned, and this is a fun trick, when you paint greenery hanging from a ceiling, I usually block in, and the same goes for like a tree. Okay, a tree with a blue sky behind it. I would block in the overall value shape of the tree or the block of greenery in a thinner block of oil paint, not something very heavy and opaque, but just kind of block it in. And usually I just scribble it in, so it's like, okay, if you squint, the form is there, and then you can either wipe away or just add the sky holes, if you will. It's kind of the same concept with greenery. It's a little
Mhm.
messier, so you have to be intentional with when you squint at the painting, the greenery, what, like squint not at the painting, you squint at the room, the blocks of greenery that are more form like and less just leaves and vines
Mhm.
that are more coming out of the edges. You get that form block and then you put that in the painting, and then you can add some little sky holes, if you will, some of the background holes, and then come off of it with the little green leaves at the end of the night, like later. So anytime I do a block of a block, I think in terms of shapes and blocks. If I'm going to do a centerpiece, and the centerpiece is essentially a ball, but you do have some eucalyptus leaves that come out the edges, or some greenery, some leaves. I will wait to do those edge pieces until the end of the evening, until the background has been painted, and then I can wipe away and kind of sculpt around each of those little forms, the little leaves. So that's kind of a trick that I learned with painting greenery, like layering that properly. and I had to
Okay.
learn that the hard way. So,
Okay, that's so helpful.
yeah.
Listening to all these little tips.
Mhm.
Tip on the like the thin to thick. These are like I'm like I didn't know this. I'm not trained at all in oil, so I'm like I'm just grasping all these little tips.
I actually would love to recommend Chris Fornatero is an oil
Okay.
painter. He has a YouTube channel as well. Referred to as the paint coach. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody go look him up. I've talked about him before, and I think I do run an ad, like an advertisement on the podcast for his courses, because he has like an introduction foundations of oil painting online course, very affordable. Usually it's like $97,
Yes.
and he breaks down how to get started with oil paints and then what these concepts are in just a really down to earth kind of way. He was an athlete, and he's a friend of mine online. Basically, we're both artists, educators, and the way that he talks about the the fundamentals of oil painting is very much the way a coach would talk to an athlete. It's like very encouraging and very simplified to where you can understand it and then you can apply it. And anyway, it's just, I would recommend his course. I'll link to that here as well.
Yes, I loved he was on a guest on your wedding painter's blueprint too. I loved that
Yes,
week.
and he was very generous with his time and answering a bunch of questions. If you didn't know, if you're listening, inside the Wedding Painter's Blueprint online course for live wedding painters, which is Emily as a member, so this is very exciting for me to get to talk to a student. I invite some sort of expert in either art, business, or the wedding industry once a week when we're going through the live course. To It's an interview, so I get to ask them questions, they get to share advice in their field of expertise, and Chris was one of the speakers this past year. And yeah, that's true, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
But
so helpful.
anyway, his YouTube channel is awesome, and then his course is great too. But I would recommend you check that out too, because he in terms of getting started with oil paints, I also was not educated in oil paints. I was a student of life, if you will.
Hmm.
And anyway, he's just a little bit more thorough. So that was my like story of how I went from acrylic paints to oil paints. I still love acrylic paints, and I still love what you're able to do with acrylic paints. I actually am going to be creating an original collection for a gallery release here in New Orleans. I work with a gallery here in New Orleans, and I'm excited to let them sell it, sell the
Oh,
work
that's so
for me.
exciting.
Yeah, so well, I'm considering doing a number of those pieces in acrylic just to dive back into the medium, because I've been
Yeah,
working with oils for so long. But
sure.
yeah, I really love working with oils for wedding paintings. So, what do you think? What are your maybe concerns about working with portraits in oils? What's your frame of mind with that?
I've never really done a portrait in oil, so I'm like, I mean, the way you explained it of like in your class, like, okay, first of all, that video of like you painting the girl's face in your class was so helpful. Like that turned a corner for me in painting portraits, so that
Mm,
was really helpful. And I I guess I am just worried about the unknown of like, being able to make correct changes. Like with acrylic, whenever I mess up like the proportions of like a face or their body, I just go over it with more paint. But I feel like with oil, I know I've heard like you can like wipe it away.
mm-hmm,
I don't know if like that's the best way to correct change, but I yeah, I think I just need to give it a try and see if I even like it.
mm-hmm.
I know I love painting like landscapes and architecture even with oil, but I
Yeah.
don't know about people. So
Yeah, it's very, I want to say it's very similar. I'm looking at the pieces behind you. If anybody is listening, maybe listen on Spotify. I know we showed the video on Spotify. YouTube, you can definitely see the video. But behind Emily on the wall, there's a beautiful painting of a bouquet of flowers in a vase with light kind of coming through a window and casting a shadow. Okay. The way that she painted, was that one done in oils?
yes.
Okay, the way that you paint a flower, you're starting with a basic form and then you're adding
Hmm.
dimension. You basically do the same thing with a face. And in order to do so quickly, efficiently, and effectively, proportion wise, understanding the proportions of a face, which you've had practice doing
Hmm.
working with acrylics, coming back in with the starting with the forms, the pockets of light and shadow under the eye sockets, understanding the skull, like what a skull
Yeah.
structure looks like, and where the deep set parts are, highlights versus the shadows under a nose, things like that, starting in like forms, and then adding the finer details, and then adding the darker points and the highlights last, as
Hmm.
John Singer Sargent taught us. um, it's really easy to kind of mold a face with oil paint with fewer brushstrokes than you would think.
Hmm.
One of the not issues, but the things that happen with acrylics is because it dries quickly. You put the paint down, and like you're kind of coloring in, if you will, and
Yeah.
then you can go back over it. Whereas oils, you want to mix that color properly. You want to like observe the reference photo. A lot of people will say, well, what color do you use? Well, it depends on the reference photo. It depends on the lighting. Um,
Yeah.
you can't just, and it's not all across the board. All white people are this color, all black people are this color. It's not, that's not true. It depends entirely on the reference photo, and getting likeness depends on the light and shadow play and color tones and things like that. So building a face, if you will, I think in
Hmm.
terms of sculpting, right? Sculpting forms, larger forms to the more minute details. It's very similar the way that you build a face with acrylics and the way you build a face with oils. Um, you want to start with the larger forms and then kind of add those finer details. So I think you should just give it a try. Pull
Yeah.
one of the videos in the course,
Hmm.
in the module. I think it's either 3 or 4 where we do the small tiny portraits.
Hmm.
Do those in oils. You can
Okay.
use very much the same, and I'll be adding this next go round of the course when we open it in February. I've created my materials list that's like clickable, shoppable materials list for oils. I'll be including tutorials for oil painting portraits for those who
Nice.
want to either switch to oils, or who have been working with oils, who need um, just maybe they want to. I've been doing it. I wanted to give it some time. And this is what I told everybody this past year. I had only been working with oils for a year. And so I wanted to get better, and educate myself more, and get really good at using the medium
Hmm.
before I even attempted to show you guys or explain what I had learned. Explaining what you know is so much harder than doing the thing that you
For
know how to
sure.
do. And you know this because you have a YouTube
Hmm.
channel.
Yep.
Do you find that it's
So
exhausting to kind of take what you know how to do in your head and explain it verbally?
yeah, and the way I do tutorials is I am talking while painting
Mhm.
in real time. I don't do a voiceover, and so sometimes it's hard for me to be like to put it into words, and then I'm
Yeah.
just like I apologize to everyone. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to explain this better, but
That's so
yeah.
funny. I know, I think I would do the same thing. I've done it both ways, where I've painted and then recorded a voiceover while watching the video, and I can like pause it and like think about how I want to say this better, and but I've also recorded while I was painting, and I feel like I'm just like, you just put the paint here. It's so
Yeah, or
hard.
like you get into like a zone and like you
Yes.
forget to talk and you're just like painting and then you're oh wait, I need to talk.
I forgot people are watching.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I'm glad I'm not alone with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
would, if you haven't
so
done the
cool.
portraits in oils, I would go back to the videos. In fact,
Okay.
the tiny portrait instruction videos in the course, it's I use a limited palette there. I think I use like 5 or 6 colors.
Hmm.
Use those colors as well with oils, because using a limited palette will help you kind of stretch and flex your muscles in terms of color mixing and understanding, pushing skin tones warmer or cooler, and how to pull like greens and
Yeah.
purples into skin tone. I think it's a beautiful way to learn instead of just
Yeah,
going for purple, like just mix from the
definitely.
primaries.
Yeah. Oh, something else I wanted to
Yes.
ask, kind of like with portraits.
Yeah.
I think, okay, so the thing that's going to be like really hard, I feel like for me, is like the change in timing of the process. So because currently with acrylics, I get there early before the ceremony, or if I'm painting the ceremony, I'll get there hours before the ceremony, paint the
Mm-hmm.
whole background, and then place the bride and groom right on top. But you can't really do that with oils. I don't know. Like, how do you go about like making the composition? Do you have to wait after, like, let's say you're painting this ceremony, do you have to not even start until after the ceremony and wait to get that reference photo and then lay down the composition? How do you go about that?
That's a very good question. I always recommend not painting, like when you arrive, you see a landscape or you see an empty room or a room filled with
Hmm.
tables. You see the setting and you want to start painting the background. But
Right.
what happens is you spend precious time, maybe 30 minutes, maybe a whole hour, painting what's directly behind the position in the composition where the couple will go, where
Mm,
that time that you could have spent painting more detail in a floral arrangement off to the side, or chairs, things that take a long time, whatever. So I would recommend that everybody stop wasting time on
mm,
background elements that you know are going to be covered by something else. If, for example, if you're painting, if your request was to paint a ceremony exit shot where the bride and groom are walking down the aisle right in the middle, and the crowd on either side. Jesse Lawrence actually is the queen master of crowd work, I call it.
mhm,
Everybody go check her work out, J Lawrence art, I think, on Instagram. But she is just very detailed with the way that she abstracts but includes impressionistic kind of detail of crowds in the rows of chairs or the pews in a church for her ceremony paintings. Anyway, let's say you arrive 2 hours ahead of time and you see florals or mountains or something right there in that middle third of the horizontal composition, and you start painting that
mm,
for an hour. And then people arrive and you're supposed to be painting the crowd. What are you going to do? You're going to paint the crowd right on top of the work you've already done.
mm.
No, no, no. I encourage everybody to start with a sketchbook. I know everybody in the course got a wedding painter's sketchbook. Um, that I'm very excited about. It's only available for students in the course. But grab a pencil, a pen, a paintbrush, whatever, and then practice, give a couple of create a couple of sketches, composition sketches. Some ideas for, is it going to be a centered composition or maybe a rule of thirds where you're putting the couple off to the side on a third marker. Just kind of play with some ideas for composition, and when you have everything
Mhm.
sketched out and proportionate, even if it's very loose and ugly but you can see it,
Sure.
then keep the spot on the composition where the couple is going to go, keep that empty. You can kind of sketch. What I like to do is sketch, like if we're looking at the frame of the video, my head's right here in the middle, kind of the top third, right?
Mhm.
If I'm going to paint two people in the center of the composition, I'm going to illustrate how, just for height purposes, because if I'm painting things around it and I want it to be proportioned, I don't want the couple to be hitting their heads on the chandelier. That doesn't make
Right.
sense. So I need to know how tall they're going to be and what plane they're going to be on in the three-dimensional view of the composition. So back here, this is a plane. People standing in the background maybe standing back here, whereas people in the foreground may be standing up here. If you're just listening and you have no idea, go to YouTube and see what I'm looking at, see what I'm talking about. So I'll illustrate where their feet are going to be in the composition and then where the tops of their heads are going to be. And that will make sense with how I illustrate other guests, other elements in the room, etc. And then I don't know if they're going to, if I don't even know what her gown is going to look like at this point. I don't know if
Right.
it's a ball gown. I don't know if it's a very tight fitting lace gown. If they're doing a dance, I don't know if he's going to be spinning her out and the two of them are going to take up a lot more space on the canvas than if they were both very skinny and very wearing very form fitting outfits and taking up 2 inches. Like you don't know how much room. So you kind of want to gesture where they're going to be, how tall they're going to be, how much room you're going to give for them, and then leave that area blank. You can sketch out either with a pencil. I like Conti pencils,
Mhm.
lead based crayons, that kind of thing, oil based crayons. Those work great under oil paint, or use oil paint thinned out on a little number zero brush, round brush. Sketch it out, sketch out the composition, and then start working on something else. If you know the sky's going to change, then paint the gradient of the sunset sky first. If you know that you're going to put some really banging florals in the foreground, get started on that first so that you can use your time wisely, and then
Sure.
kind of ignore the background area of where the couple's going to go. And then what happens is you're able to paint the couple. You've given them enough space. You know how large they're going to be. You can use whatever reference photo you get because you've got the space for it. You've been considerate of that. And then what happens is the background becomes less important. The background right behind the couple, let's say it's the band, it's like the vertical hamburger of the
Mm-hmm.
floor, the band stand, and then some lighting, and then the back wall, whatever. It's not important. So it's just kind of blocks of color giving the illusion of depth in the background. Okay.
Mm.
You can paint that kind of around the couple and it won't look, you'll be with oils, with the blendability of the oil paints, you'll be able to kind of work with the softness of the
Sure.
edges of the portraits and the what they're wearing, because you can paint the background after the foreground kind of. That's a beautiful thing that oil paint allows you to do. So that's the advice, that kind of long-winded advice, for how you work with um, working the background around the foreground where the couple's going to go.
Okay, I think that that has always been like the most confusing part to me is like the timing. And then do
Mhm.
you feel like you're able to get for the most part the painting looking done by the end of the reception?
That is my goal always. Other people have different goals. Other people, I know
Hmm.
artists that are like, I paint for 7 hours and I don't stress about it. I get done as much as I can. And then, if it is what it is at the end of the night,
Hmm.
my couple knows that I'm going to finish it and it's going to be amazing and perfect in the studio. That's where I do that's where the magic happens, finishing the painting in the studio. And they communicate that well in their marketing. And then they communicate that well with their clients ahead of time, setting expectations. With the work that we do, especially in the in the industry where a potential client may be looking at all these live painters on Instagram,
Hmm.
and they may in their mind have this idea of what to expect by the end of the night, especially the artists who are taking reveal videos and the painting looks done, or they're doing the reveal video, but then they kind of clip to the painting finished in their studio. That's what the transparency of what to expect by the end of the night, is it's sometimes not clear in
Hmm.
terms of social media. Whatever, you don't need to be, but as long as your clients they understand what to expect by the end of the night. And I think it's important, because you promote yourself as a live painter, and because it's entertainment, and you want the
Right.
couple to be really like surprised and satisfied with the painting. You want to at least have the portraits done. I learned that lesson a long time ago. I was really hyper focused on centerpieces and the band
Hmm.
and the whatever, and then I ran out of time before I could finish the portraits. And my couple at the end of the night came by to see the painting, and I could tell on their faces that they're they weren't done. Like, their portrait wasn't
Hmm.
done. They didn't notice the flowers. They didn't even
Oh.
notice you could see on their face, they're like, "Oh, well, I hope it comes out good when it's actually
Oh.
done." And I was like, "Okay, lesson learned. I'll never forget. If I only am able to paint for an hour, get the
Hmm.
portraits done. Get the couple done." Um, so learn that. Anyone listening, learn that lesson before, the easy way, without having to
Hmm.
experience that sadness on your couple's face. Oh my gosh, you don't want that. So
Yeah.
I like to try to finish the painting by the end of the night, completely. I think that that's really fun. I think that it allows me to work in a more loose and organic way. The
Hmm.
brushstrokes are more lively. The decisions, I have to make good decisions, but the decisions can rest. The lighting and shadow, the colors, the details. Like, I want to get it right the first time. And then I take them all back to the studio afterward anyway. And so if there is a mistake made, if there's something that's kind of bugging me about a proportion issue, or if I'm just not able to finish, I can do that in the studio. That's my goal. What is your goal?
Okay.
What has been your goal? Is your goal to finish by the end of the night?
Yes,
Hmm.
almost always I try to send it back home. Like I leave it there, which is something I would miss with
Yes.
if I did make the switch. But I mean, the first few I took home just because I wanted to give me put that in my mindset that I didn't have to finish, and I
Yeah.
have that in my mindset now. Like if I have to take it home, I can.
Hmm.
But I had never done first dance poses until like recently. I had always done like I'd always have the request for like doing the ceremony kiss, or even had like a first look one time, but I hadn't done the first dance, and those are tough to finish on time for me.
Hmm.
Since the that doesn't happen until sometimes like later in the day, 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes with those I will take them home. But
Yeah. And then I've learned if the timeline is not working in your favor by the time you get your reference photo, get the general form, block in the dress,
mm-hmm.
block in the suit, get the portraits down,
Yeah,
and then you can add the detail on the dress later. It's
sure.
more important that it feels like, oh, it looks like us, which means like
Yeah.
faces and general proportions, things like that. There's a way to kind of block it in real fast and then say, don't worry, I know it's a lacy dress. The lace is going to come. Uh, just being that reassuring point for that source of reassurance and positivity for the couple, I think is important as well.
mm-hmm.
If you see concern on their faces, just like, hey, it's okay, this is going to get
Yeah.
studio time, this is that I think that's important for our job anyway.
Yep.
You may have heard me talk about my little side business, my little fine art print shop. I create an original painting, I take a photo of it, and I print it, and I print it again and again and again. I make hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars a year on prints. It's so easy. And I learned everything I know about creating my own prints and printing them in house from Laurie Ann Gonzalez and her Art to Print course. I highly recommend, if you are an artist and you want to make easy money from your original works and even the commission works, you can resell those as prints. I recommend you check out Art to Print. Laurie Ann has a very direct way of teaching, and you are really going to appreciate her no fluff method of giving you information and telling you exactly what you need to do to make making fine art prints in your own studio a breeze. You can check her out online at learn.laurieannart.com. That's learn at LaurieAnnEart.com, or just click the link in the show notes for my affiliate link. Check her out and thank me later. I think, yeah, you're an incredibly talented oil painter. So I don't think that, working with the medium or understanding how to work with the colors, that shouldn't be an issue. What other concerns do you have? What's held you back?
I think just like the travel process, like with I okay,
Mm.
so I've only used oils in my studio. I've
Hmm.
never gone out. I've never, you know what? I should just practice going out to plein air with them. Even like
Hmm.
I've never taken them out of my studio to go paint with.
Yeah.
Um, and then also like the cleanup process scares me a little bit. I'm like, is it harder? I don't know. Whenever I use acrylics, I really just wash my brushes off with water and I
Yeah.
put them away. I feel like with oil, I don't know, maybe I'm just really messy with them here in my studio, but I feel like it's a lot harder to like clean up. I don't know.
It can be messy because oil paint travels. It does. You
Yeah.
accidentally brush your palm in yellow paint, and then before you know it, you've got yellow paint everywhere.
Yep.
So you do have to kind of get used to being intentional with where you're pulling your sleeves up, and if you're
Hmm.
going to use gloves, gloves are good for protecting your skin, forming a barrier between the solvent and your skin, your pores, which is good. I use what's called invisible glove, and it's kind of a
I've heard of that.
like
It's
a
like a lotion.
lotion. It's kind of a
Yeah.
silicone feeling lotion, and you put it on your hands, and it dries pretty quickly. And then you can wash your hands. It forms a barrier, because when I use gloves, I'm looking past the camera because my gloves are over there. I use latex gloves in the studio, but you don't have that sense of touch. And so you don't feel when you've touched a color. And then
Hmm.
you look down and you're like, oh,
Yep.
it's everywhere. It's all over my laptop. It's everywhere. But in a wedding setting, you're staying put in your corner, and then whenever you go eat, you kind of do a check of your body and your
Hmm.
hands, and do I have oil paint? I'm leaving it all here. Okay, good. And then you can step away and go wash your hands and eat. I think you should absolutely go do some plein air painting. Set like
Yeah.
mark it like a date on your calendar. This is what I'm doing. My plein air kit I actually just opened up. um I don't remember why, but I have primary colors. I'm looking at them. I use Williamsburg. I'll show everybody. I like to use Williamsburg paints. They're like handmade paints. They're a little on the pricey side, but the opacity and kind of the juiciness. Oh my god, I love Williamsburg. Um, Gamlin is also a wonderful professional grade oil paint. It's not, I say professional grade, it's not cheap. I don't like cheap oil paint. The quality is
Mm-hmm.
better the kind of the pricier they get, unfortunately. But you start with M. Graham is also good, and whole is it Holbein, Holbein, um, Rembrandt. Like these are all wonderful handmade oil paints, and I would start with the primaries. So I have, let me grab them. I have, I like yellow ochre. It's kind of an earthy yellow. I use it a lot, and I can
Mm-hmm.
mix something like that. But just having it, I would rather have it than not have it. I use ivory black. Piroli red is one that I've recently been reaching for, but Fanchon, Fanchon red, they're very similar, by Williamsburg. I like these as well as the cadmium red, but just cadmiums can be a little bit more on the toxic side. So these are two good colors. I had cobalt deep blue in my little kit, but I like phthalo blue and I like ultramarine blue. They're very
Mm-hmm.
different blues, but they're all very pretty. And so you can kind of play with each one. And then this tube is just white. I had a really big tube of white and I just filled this up to take plein air painting because I didn't want to bring the big
Mm-hmm.
tube, and I had an extra empty tube. And
Nice.
then a cadmium yellow medium that's too far to reach. And then I have linseed oil is the medium that I really like to use to. It's not really an. It does slow the drying time, but
Mm-hmm.
really it just makes the if it's cold or if the oil paint is kind of stiff, it just loosens it up,
Ah,
and so
sure.
it makes it a little bit. It's like melting butter, kind of. It
Okay.
makes it a little bit easier
Easier
to
to spread.
mix and move on the canvas. If I wanted to increase the drying time, I would use Galkyd. That's Galkyd. I like Galkyd for that. It's also kind of oily, but it it's almost like honey in a way where
Mm.
it's a little stickier. It does work really well mixed in with the paint, but then when you put it on, it's like hot honey. It's thinner. You can create
Interesting.
really pretty glazes with it. I Walnut oil also does the same as linseed oil. Um, I would play with. You can buy this little tiny refined linseed oil. You can buy a kit, and I think I linked to it. I can send you a link. In fact, I'll link it here in the podcast.
Yeah.
A little kit of like 5 or 6 different types of mediums you can buy in a little kit from Amazon. Um, Let me make a note real quick
Yeah, that'd be
for
helpful.
Brian. Anybody listening, I'm sure knows Brian because I'm always making notes to Brian live. Okay. What else? Traveling. Yeah. So grab these. I mean, literally paints, a little thing of medium. You can get
Mm-hmm.
little jars and put even less. The little metal canister that locks at the top with Gamsol. You can use Turpenoid. You can use turpentine. Turpentine stinks. Oh, it's so potent.
Yeah.
So Turpenoid is an odorless version of that, and then Gamsol is the solvent that I really love to
I
use.
like Gamsol. Yeah.
To use that, and then take those with a little plain. You can use your French air box. You can use a smaller
Mm-hmm.
plein air easel if you'd like, and then get out there with some little
I
panels.
need to.
I love
Okay.
artifacts. I'll link to, you can get a few sample size. These are 5x7
Oh, this is so
panels
cute.
from Artifacts. I just did a portrait. You can't see it. It's on this easel. It's kind
Okay.
of tucked away there, but I've been doing little portraits on these and having so much fun. This is the all-in panel from Artifacts, and I'll link
Mm-hmm.
to this. They're Belgian linen
I
lined.
was gonna say, what like is that linen? And it's like not like
It's
an
linen.
actual
It's
canvas.
painted. I painted
Okay.
a little base on it just to knock out that bright white. But this
Mm-hmm.
particular one is 538. 53. I'll link to it, but I would go ahead and get a sample pack from Artifacts. They're a company that out of California that builds aluminum panels, and they're excellent to do studies on, and then also masterpieces. Oh my gosh, they're timeless. So there's a bunch of advice. What else? Taking it when you
Ooh.
go out to paint in plein air, think in terms of form. Use a limited palette
Mm-hmm.
so that you can practice color mixing, but think in terms of form, and then you can block in a landscape or an urban landscape very quickly, and then add, just kind of, you can remove paint, add paint, figure out the drying time based on cold weather, hot weather, humid weather, that kind of thing, and just play with the medium. That'll give you confidence to take it out into a wedding where you're like, okay, I know essentially your what goes in your French box, your palette, your wash cup. I prefer to use these blue shop towels instead of a rag,
Okay.
because these you can dispose of easily and they don't leave the fuzzies that a paper
Mm.
towel roll will leave. What's on your mind?
I was gonna ask about the rags
Uh-huh.
because, okay, I had not known this, and I learned it in the wedding painters class because somebody had said, "Oh, you need to be careful of how you dispose of your wet rags because they can catch on fire." I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
did not know that. Um, so how do you dispose of them
Okay,
after
so
a
I
wedding?
bring them home. So
Okay.
basically, before everybody freaks out, I took a workshop, a live workshop with Michael Harding, who also creates an incredible line of oil paints, and mediums. He has a miracle medium too that I love. But anyway, he was telling us what he had learned and about the science of oil paint and solvents and what makes it flammable. Okay. Um, in terms of the shop towels, or rags or anything that you use, it is more an issue with the solvent. When the solvent on the rags, as you clean your brushes and you wipe your brushes, I actually have some dirty rags right here. When I am cleaning my brushes and then I wipe them on the rags, um, the solvent will dry. If I threw 100 of these in the trash can, when they dry, they kind of emit a heat. And so when you
Mm.
compact these rags or these shop towels with this dried solvent, there actually is this element of heat. And Michael Harding actually mentioned that he's had a spontaneous combustion happen in his trash can in his studio or whatever, twice in his life. And he said basically the way to, now you have to throw them away and you have to dispose of them. But in the meantime, what he likes to do is just pour water in his trash can, keep them soaked, keep them, from drying and compacting and kind of creating this source of heat, which is just insane to think about spontaneous combustion. But that is what I learned from Michael Harding, and I trust him. So I trust his life experience and his knowledge. So that's a little nugget of advice. So I bring, when I work at a wedding, I probably go through like 3 of those in the course of a couple hours. I could go through more if I were messier, but I'm really trying to limit the number of shop towels, and then I keep them in my box easel, and when I get home, I take them out and throw them in the trash
Sure.
can, and then I pour water in my trash can every now and then
Great.
dispose of it that way. That's what I do there.
That's
When
one
you
I had was the.
travel with a wet oil painting, do you fly often for weddings, or are they mostly local?
I've only flown once, so yeah. I guess that's another question. How
Mhm.
do you deal with a travel wedding? Do you just? I know there's like the canvases that you can like roll up. Is
Mhm.
that?
You
I
can
don't
do
know.
that if you paint more
Acrylic.
thinly. No, well, no,
Okay.
oil paints as well. If you paint, and if your process is to paint thinner, if that makes sense, some people
Mm-hmm.
glob on the paint, and that is, it creates beautiful thick paintings, but you have this very juicy wet oil painting, then you can't really roll it up. You don't want to put anything on the surface. And so what I like to do, and I'll tell anyone this, I think it's so fun. I'm going to use 2 panels for an example, but imagine these are like 24 by 36-inch canvases. I have these little clips, these little carrier clips, and if you'll notice, there's 2 of them. They look like chip
Mm.
bag clips, and then they fit 3/4 inch deep canvases. These particular ones don't fit the gallery wrapped ones, so I keep that in mind when I'm purchasing the canvas for the trip. I'll use 2, oftentimes the good quality Belgian linen one, and then like a cheap one of the same size. And then I put them face to face. So in the video, I've got 2 little panels. Let's say this is the wet oil painting. I clip them together like this to where they're not touching.
Oh.
I use these little clips, and then I clip them together. It has a little spacer in the center,
Oh, that's smart.
and
Okay.
I've got like 8 of them, and I put 2 on either edge. And then I put that inside of a foam lined portfolio case. And that I sometimes, depending on the size and what fits in the case, like a 24 by 36 can fit in a box. I'll put those in a box, in the box, in the bag. The bag is lined with foam, and then I zip it up and I got a strap that goes around it. So I'm able to transport larger oil paintings on a plane. Anything larger than that, I would have to ship back to the studio, again covering all of those costs, so making sure that the client, that it's compensated in a way, the way I price packages and things. If I needed to unstretch an oil painting and roll it, I would probably bring an extra roll of canvas, an extra sheet,
Mhm.
face down, roll it up, and when I got home, basically unstick it and then make touch ups. But the using these clips,
Yeah.
I've seen artists use little foam cubes or little anything that creates a barrier, anything that
Mhm.
creates space between the wet painting and another surface cut to the same size. You can use
Mhm.
foam, you can use wood, you can use another canvas, but anything that you can put face to face with the wet surface and then really secure those two things
Sure.
together. You can use tape and bubble wrap and tape, and um, it's kind of a big old hassle thing, but you practice putting that together in the studio,
Mhm.
and then you take it apart and then you pack those materials, and then when you're in your hotel room at 1 in the morning and you have a flight the next morning, you can package your painting safely, and depending on how big it is, you can either carry it on the plane or you can check it on the plane
Sure.
with some some sense of security, knowing that it'll be safe. And then of course with every painting that is out of your hands and in someone else's hands, there is a risk of damage. And so you in your mind having a plan B, um, understanding the risk of if it's damaged, you have to redo it, kind of thing.
Mm.
The client understanding not only whether you verbally talked about it or went over it in your contract, what happens if that worst case scenario happens and it's damaged in transit. Um, just kind of having those conversations and knowing in peace of mind in the end, you're like, I can redo this thing.
Yeah.
It may not be exactly stroke for stroke the same painting, but you will get a beautiful painting, and I will
Yeah.
be there to paint on your wedding day. And adding that, giving your clients that reassurance, I think is really important. If they choose not to spend the money, then that's fine. At least you were authentic and transparent and not um, I don't know, withholding information. I think it's very important to be transparent with information. It sets you up to be the expert as well. You're like, look, this is my experience. This could happen.
Yep.
This it likely won't, but just in case it does, here's my plan, and here's me sounding very confident in the fact that I will deliver something amazing for you. Please hire me, kind of thing.
Yes, yes. I know your contract was super helpful. Like to go to, I needed to look at my contract and like, I don't know, thinking about things like, I mean, I have not dealt with it yet of like being sick on a wedding day,
Hmm.
but I know that's probably bound to happen at some point, but having a plan if it does.
Oh yeah, and then having that clause in your contract because it hasn't happened
Mm-hmm.
yet. Yay! But let's say you book a wedding, you've booked a wedding and they've signed the contract and they're aware of your clause, they're aware of what your condition for what happens if you're sick.
Mm-hmm.
Then when the day comes and you are sick and you have to cancel, you have a plan. And you know what I mean? And there's no
Yeah.
panic that oh, I've never dealt with this before. Now I'm stuck with the agreement that I made without the protection clause for
Mm-hmm.
myself, kind of thing. And now you've kind of covered a couple of bases, hypothetical situations, and if it happens, you could be like, oh, I'm so glad we have
Yes.
some sort of agreement. Anyway, yeah. So painting, creating the actual painting, the points, the highlight points, I'd like to revisit are to start with a composition plan. Okay, if you have your composition planned out, then you likely will not encounter a decision that needs to be made that will require you to overlap detail. Um, if you do find yourself having to put the portrait over a part of the painting that you've already painted, use some solvent, use a rag, and just wipe it away. And don't try to kind of carve away, just wipe away that whole area. And and then move forward, and then dry it up and move forward with confidence. Scrape it away if you have to, but oil paint is forgiving in that way. There's this fear of layering wet oil paint on top of wet oil paint. And yeah, you should avoid doing that. But unlike acrylics that dry really fast, oils you can wipe it away with or
Mm-hmm.
without solvent. Sometimes I can use the corner of my towel and
Mm-hmm.
wipe away where the head is going to be, where the skin tone is going to be, or like the brightest part of her gown. Maybe there's some backlighting and then I need that to be like bright white. I can wipe away even the underpainting, even the that base tint that I've put down on the
Mm-hmm.
panel. I can wipe that away and make it very vibrant. So it, in a way, it's like it's forgiving in that way. And other than the switch from the rags to the towel to the shop rags, the shop towels, the solvent, switching from water to solvent. The palette is essentially the same. I would
Mm-hmm.
switch from dioxazine purple. I like to use dioxazine purple in the golden open colors. I really love that shade of purple. But for oils, I'm really liking manganese violet. That's a good switch I like to make. I do have a mid range skin tone mixture that I
Mm-hmm.
really love for acrylics. If anybody, I'll actually make a note to include a link to that here. It's kind of a free download on my website if anybody's interested in that tutorial. For oil paints, I don't use a skin tone mixture.
Oh wow.
I really do my best to um, observe the tones that I'm looking at and then mix those colors. So it is a little bit more time consuming, but I lean a lot on a mixture of like warmer tones. So burnt sienna, some either the red, the Fanchona, the Piroli red, the cadmium yellow, like those kind of tones. And then if it needs to be cooled down, adding the
Mm-hmm.
blue, mixing some green, mixing some purples, starting with the warm tones for the more warm tone, skin toned people that I paint, and then cooler with the cooler skin tones. That the colors are, because they don't dry darker like the acrylics do. Oil paints, I like to be able to look at the color, mix the color, and
Mm-hmm.
then build the skin tones like that. And then all the equipment stays the same. Have a plan for the wet, how you're going to transport the wet oil painting, and then of course, depending on how thick or thin you apply the paint, the drying time will be different. So some of my
Yeah.
paintings are dry within 2 weeks. Most of them are fully dry to the touch within like 6 weeks, and then I can
Mm.
varnish with Gam Var, which is what's a varnish that you can apply to oil paint that is dry to the touch. Oil paint oxidizes; it doesn't. The water doesn't evaporate and it dry like that, like an acrylic
Sure.
painting. So it does take months and months, sometimes up to a year, to fully oxidize and cure and harden on those deeper layers. But Gam Var can be applied to a painting that is dry to the touch, and then packaging that and shipping it off. Yeah, that's it. So my advice to you is to grab some primaries, grab your
Mm-hmm.
painting setup, plein air painting setup, and go have fun. Go paint some things.
Yes.
Um, Paint standing up. Practice how you're going to hold your rag and how you're going to protect your skin, that kind of thing, and then get used to the drying time. Um, so that you can, like, starting with the larger forms, adding the finer
Mm-hmm.
details, and then just get more comfortable. And then when's your next wedding that you have booked?
I actually have one on Friday, next Friday.
Good luck.
So,
I would try to squeeze in a couple plein air painting sessions. You can even do it in the studio if you don't have time or can't get out. But
mhm.
I would grab everything and then take it somewhere and then do that before your wedding. And then when you're at that wedding and you're using your acrylics, try to compare the
Sure.
experience of layering. Try to um, create the composition like you would with oils. Try to
Okay.
paint more heavily. You can use the acrylic drying, slow drying mediums, and then you can also just paint with more paint, like just apply
Mhm.
more paint on the brush, on the canvas. Try to paint more heavily and kind of pretend that you're working with oils and
Sure.
see how the decisions would vary there.
Okay.
And then honestly, you're very courageous in the things that you've done in the past, and so I would challenge you to try to uh, get one of your clients that you have booked to allow you to use oils.
Yeah.
That's how I got my first job. I called the
Mhm.
client and I said, "Have I got the upgrade for you? I would love an opportunity to use oil paint instead of acrylic. Here is an example of a portrait I've done in the studio with
Mhm.
oils, but you will be my first live painting done in oils. But just to sweeten the deal, I'm also going to offer a free upgrade. And that's just something that I
Yeah.
chose to do because I wanted to paint larger anyway. So she had originally booked a 24 by 30, and I upgraded her to the 30 by 40 at
Nice.
no additional cost. And I used oil. So it was
Wow.
to her, she was like, I mean, I trust you. So that sounds great. So to her, she got an incredible upgrade and it really allowed me to dive in. There was no going back, and it was not
Dang.
small, and it was a room full of people, and I was having so much fun, and I don't think I'll ever go back unless I have to, or the situation
Mhm.
requires me, I can't
Yeah.
access oil paint or whatever. Um yeah, that was my experience. I
Gosh.
hope that all of everything I've shared has been helpful. Do you have any other
For
questions?
sure. No, that's been so helpful. I was going to ask though, that client that you got to switch, then after the rest of them, like after that you had booked, did you have to be like, "Hey everyone, I'm switching to oil," or like did you, or was hers like the latest one you had booked?
I Okay, so let me think of all of the other ones. All of the other ones that I had booked, now that I had been able to do one, it's always easier to
Mhm.
promote something when you have an
Sure.
example of it. So when I did her painting, I photographed it, I finished it, photographed it, and then I was able to I actually asked the photographer who I knew, which was convenient, a friend of mine. I reached out to the photographer for her wedding. I said, "Hey, can you grab a few photos of me, extra photos of me painting because this is a new thing I'm doing and I want to promote it." And so I had a few professional photos of me creating the painting. So
Mhm.
I was able to reach out to everybody who I had booked and say, "Hey, I'm officially switching to oils. Like this is what I'm doing."
Mm. Okay.
However, we're in a contract. We have an agreement that I'm going to work with acrylics because that's what I've been working with for 9 years. Here's an example of the last painting that I did, my very first oil painting. See how it's the same? See how the style is the same? The painting that you are expecting me to create is going to be the same quality, if not better, now that I'm using
Mm.
oil. So I really sold it.
Okay.
Um, what do you think? And I only had one client who was actually in New
Ah.
York. So it was a travel client say, "We really want to bring the painting home that night."
Mm.
I can't remember if they were traveling as well or if they were just really like they wanted to bring the painting home that night. And they said, "Can you still do ours in acrylic because we don't want to wait." And so I did that one in acrylic. So after I told myself I'll never do it in acrylic again, I did that painting, and the whole time I was like,
Yeah, I hate this.
it's like breaking up with a guy. It's like it's so obvious. It's so clear
Mhm.
that I'm doing the right thing by switching to oils. And the painting is beautiful. Their painting I
Mhm.
actually am obsessed with. And I'll share a photo of it here
Yeah, I want to see
on
it.
the screen. I'm obsessed. It was absolutely beautiful. But the process of creating it, I was like, yeah, I want to go back. I miss my new man oils.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that, I switched it immediately in my contract. So after I did my very first oil painting,
Mhm.
I edited my contract to reflect the process and what to expect with oils. And then my after that, everyone that I booked had the new agreement. So give it
Oh
a
my
try.
goodness.
I'm fully
Okay.
confident that you'll be able to knock it out the
Whee!
park, and I have a feeling that you're really gonna enjoy it.
Okay.
Um,
I'll be practicing a lot. I feel like over the winter, I'm like, "Ah, I like don't feel ready right now," but I think
mhm.
after some practice,
Yeah, and
maybe.
even if you look, some people are very cautious and need to practice. They need some
Mhm.
time. They need to build that confidence. I am not like that. It is helpful to have confidence in
Yeah.
your abilities, sure, but I'm very much yeah, I think I can do it.
Oh my
Let's
goodness.
book the job, and then you're like, now you have to kinda, like
Yeah.
jump and then think. I don't know. I think you should definitely try to get an upcoming booking, try to get
Okay.
that one switched to oils and then just do it. And then learn
Okay.
from mistakes. And you could take it back in the studio. You could start from scratch if you need to, which you won't
Mhm.
need to. But I think you're really going to love it. This was a lot of
Whee!
fun. Any
This
final
was fun.
questions before we wrap it up?
Gosh, when's your exhibit that you said you were doing it for? The one that you have coming up.
The oh
The one in
in July. So I'm going to be creating.
okay.
I think I mentioned I'm creating an original collection. I create every like 5 years. I create an original collection because it's time consuming,
Yeah.
and I'm not known for my original works, and so usually they don't sell, and then they're stuck in my house. But I am working with a friend of mine, Caveman Clevenger, who has the Orleans Gallery.
Mhm.
I'm excited to and kind of soft announce because it's so far from now. In July of next year, 2026, I'll be having a show at his gallery of my original works, and everybody will be invited. But it'll
Exciting.
be in July, so it'll give me time. I'll actually be working on the original collection while we go through the Wedding Painter's Blueprint again in the spring.
Nice.
And Emily, I hope that you're able to join us again for the
Yes.
live calls, the live critiques, whatever you can make time for, because you've
Mhm.
already gone through the course.
Yeah,
How
I'm
did you
so
like the course,
excited.
by the way? Tell the people.
It was amazing. I like that it was a pretty good combination of business, like growing in your business, but also technique. Because I really wanted to find a course that covered both of those things, and
Hmm.
I feel like yours did. So and I really liked the homeworks that we had. I know that
Yeah.
was something new that you had last year. And yeah, I think that was a really great way to practice and to see everybody's improvements throughout the course. So I want
Wonderful.
to participate those in, or I want to do those with the class this year too.
Yeah, we're gonna have new reference photos. I'm
Yeah.
so excited. So that could be a fun challenge too. If
Mm-hmm.
you can't find time to get out of the studio, sometimes that's hard to do,
Mm-hmm.
and then hard to like go source a spot to paint. Sometimes it's a hassle. Go back through the Facebook group and pull up some of those references from the challenges, the weekly challenges, and then do them in oil. Do them again. A chandelier, the landscape. Pull them up and try to tackle them in oil with the time limit and
Mm-hmm.
whatever other limitations that we had assigned, and see what you can come up with. And then share them with me, share them on the Facebook group as well. Where can people not only watch your YouTube account, all of your videos, but where can they watch you on
Mm-hmm.
social media and visit your website?
Yeah, I'm on all the platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all with the same handle, Emily Winslow Art, and of course YouTube too. So yeah, I try to post to all of those as much as I can. Love doing Instagram videos. I do a lot of, plein air videos where I'm out painting or painting at bakeries, so I love to do those.
Oh, fun. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
I bet it would be hard to focus just sitting outside of a bakery. I'd have to eat first
Yeah.
before I did that.
I try to like paint whatever I'm about to eat first and then I eat it. It's
Oh,
such a hard challenge.
there you go. And then you want to get it done in a timely manner,
Yes.
huh? Oh,
Forces
that's
me to paint
awesome.
fast.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you for allowing me to
Yeah.
have this conversation with you on a public platform so that people can kind of take notes and learn along as take notes and learn along.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, this
this
was
was a
so
lot of fun.
helpful.
You're very welcome. Oh my gosh. And then of course you're welcome to DM me again with any other questions
I
and
will.
include like share this next part of your journey,
Mhm.
switching to oils if you do, which I have a feeling you're going to love. Share that with everybody on Instagram
Will.
because hopefully you'll have a lot more followers as people listen to this episode. All right. And then subscribers on
Okay.
YouTube, please subscribe to her YouTube channel and mine. If you're watching this on YouTube or you
Yes.
didn't know this podcast was on YouTube, go check it out, The Composed Artist on YouTube, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much, Emily. And thanks for everybody for tuning in and for listening and for watching on YouTube and Spotify. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you for tuning in and joining us on this journey of artistic exploration, entrepreneurial growth, and personal development. Remember, you have the power to create a life that is both fulfilled and balanced. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe to The Composed Artist on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And don't forget to leave us a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more creatives like you. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and keep pursuing that composed life. You got this.